More than 2,000 years ago, in the treacherous rocky mountains of ancient Greece, there existed a place that even the most powerful kings did not dare to defy. It was not a palace, nor a battlefield, but a temple perched precariously on the slopes of Mount Parnassus. That place was called Delphi. The Greeks believed this was the center of the world, where the god Apollo communicated directly with humanity, and where every major and minor decision of mankind should be submitted to the will of the gods. For more than a millennium, kings, generals, and politicians from across the ancient world made pilgrimages to Delphi with the same question: what should they do next? Should they wage war or refrain? Should they form alliances or commit betrayal? Should they trust in their own destiny? And the answers they received never came from a visible god, but from the words of a mortal woman known as Pythia, the priestess of Apollo. Pythia was not of noble birth, did not come from a powerful family, and held no political authority. During the ritual, she sat upon a three-legged tripod above a fissure in the earth, from which the ancients believed the breath of the divine rose up from the underworld. As a hazy vapor spread through the temple, Pythia would fall into a trance, sometimes trembling, sometimes uttering fragmented, obscure, or even seemingly meaningless phrases. Yet it was precisely these words that were regarded as the most sacred messages humanity could receive from the gods. What is remarkable is that Pythia never delivered a complete prophecy herself. What she spoke was listened to by male priests standing nearby, who then interpreted her words and rewrote them into concise, poetic, and deeply symbolic oracles. From that moment on, the words of a human being became the will of the god Apollo. The Delphic oracles shared one very clear characteristic: they were always ambiguous. They never stated plainly what would happen, but only suggested enough for the listener to believe they had understood correctly. This very ambiguity made Delphi invincible. No matter the outcome, the prophecy could always be reinterpreted as having been correct. One of the most famous stories involving the Delphic oracle is the case of King Croesus, one of the wealthiest rulers of the ancient world. Fearing the rise of the Persian Empire, Croesus went to the temple of Delphi to ask whether he should launch a war. He received a short but powerful prophecy. If he crossed the river, a great empire would fall. Believing the oracle foretold the destruction of his enemy, Croesus did not hesitate to lead his army across the river and begin the war. However, the situation quickly turned when the Persian forces under the leadership of Cyrus the Great decisively defeated the Lydian army, captured the capital Sardis, and took Croesus prisoner. Only then did the true meaning of the prophecy reveal itself. The empire that fell was not Persia, but Croesus' own kingdom. And Delphi, in the most cruel way possible, had not been wrong at all. It was simply that no one realized they had misunderstood the oracle until everything was already over. From this point on, many historians began to ask a crucial question: who truly stood behind those prophecies? Delphi did not exist in isolation. It was a crossroads of information from across the ancient Greek world. Merchants brought economic news. Envoys carried political secrets. City-states arrived bearing their ambitions and their fears. The priests of Delphi understood the balance of power very well. They knew who was rising, who was weakening, and who was likely to fall if the wrong decision was made. With such a reservoir of information, they did not need to predict the future. They only needed to craft prophecies that were vague enough and clever enough to guide the decisions of others while never having to bear responsibility. Delphi did not issue commands, but in a world that believed the gods determined fate, a single suggestion from divine will carried more weight than any army. Many historical sources indicate that Delphi repeatedly intervened in conflicts between major city-states, such as Athens and Sparta. When one power grew too strong, the prophecies became cautious. When war was about to erupt, Delphi could frame it as either aligned with the will of the gods or condemned as an act of sacrilege. In this way, Delphi maintained its influence for more than 1,000 years, not through force but through belief. Modern science later offered a different perspective. Geological studies show that beneath the Temple of Delphi were fault lines that released gases such as ethylene, which can induce trance states and hallucinations. It is possible that Pythia genuinely believed she was speaking for the gods. It is possible that her strange states were not deception at all. But transforming those fragmented utterances into political messages powerful enough to influence the entire world was entirely in human hands. So what ultimately were the Delphic oracles? Divine miracles, or the most refined art of manipulating belief in the ancient world? Perhaps Delphi was not entirely a fraud, but neither was it simply the voice of the gods. It was a fusion of belief, fear, information, and power, condensed into statements that never clearly revealed the truth. Delphi reminds us that in any era, whoever controls human belief can control history itself. And sometimes, the most dangerous prophecies are not outright lies, but ambiguities subtle enough to lead people willingly into the fate they choose for themselves.